There are temples carved from stone that have stood for millennia, and then there is one that seems to defy the very stone it was carved from. Deep in the heart of southern India, where the heat shimmers off ancient rock, and myth still breathes through the dust, an impossible secret hangs in the silence. The Veerabhadra Temple at Lepakshi holds within its pillared hall a single stone column that does not rest on the earth. To the naked eye, it looks like any other ornately carved granite pillar, dense with gods and dancers frozen in mid-narrative. But where its base should meet the cold stone floor, there is only a gap, a sliver of light and shadow that has taunted logic for over 5 centuries. You can slide a thin piece of cloth beneath it, or even a sheet of paper, and watch it pass cleanly through without meeting resistance. It is known as the hanging pillar, and from the moment it was discovered by the wider world, the question has pulsed through every visitor's mind. What is holding it up? We build our understanding of the past on the certitude of physics, on the predictability of stone, weight, and gravity. And yet here stands a structure that seems to laugh quietly at those certainties. A stone finger pointing not to the gods it was built for, but to the limits of our knowledge. To reach this anomaly, you must first pass through the temple's outer gate, leaving the modern road behind as the scent of old stone and jasmine envelops you. The main complex opens onto a landscape of granite outcrops that roll like the backs of sleeping elephants under the blinding Indian sun. This is not just a temple, it is a gallery of frozen mythology, every inch of its interior carved with the ferocious beauty of the Vijayanagara Empire. Massive frescoes of epic tales cover the ceiling, their pigments still radiating a faded ochre and blood-red vibrancy after half a millennium. Yet none of these visual marvels draw the same hushed, uneasy reverence as that single pillar standing in the hall's far corner. The temple was built in the 16th century, during an era of extraordinary artistic ambition, when master craftsmen turned granite into lace. According to historical records, the construction was patronized by 2 brothers, Virupana and Varana, governors under the Vijayanagara king Achyutaraya. Legend paints Virupana as a devout soul who poured his fortune into this sacred place, a man so devoted that even the king's suspicion could not stop him. The official narratives says the shrine was consecrated to Veerabhadra, a wrathful manifestation of Lord Shiva, born from a cosmic lock of hair. But among the 70 carved pillars that hold the roof of the Great Hall, the builders left one unsolved riddle that outlasted their entire empire. Look closely at the hanging pillar. It stands with a slight tilt, as if it was caught in the act of slowly floating upward before being frozen in stone. The carvings on its surface are indistinguishable from the other pillars, exquisite, mathematically precise, and deeply devotional. If there is a trick, a hidden iron bracket, or a cantilevered counterweight inside the carved mass, then 500 years of scrutiny have failed to find it. Architects and engineers from the modern era have come with spirit levels, lasers, and measurement tools that can detect a hair's breadth of movement. They confirm that the column does indeed hover slightly above the floor, yet the official reports fall silent when it comes to explaining how. Some early British surveyors, accustomed to empirical absolutes, were so unsettled by the gap that they attempted to physically shift the pillar. They looped ropes around it and pulled, hoping to force the stone back into contact with the ground to break the illusion. The evidence of what happened next is written into the very walls around you. The entire ceiling of the pavilion shifted slightly with the pressure. Terrified of collapsing the temple completely, the surveyors cut the ropes and never again tried to force a rational solution upon the silent stone. That day, the hanging pillar ceased to be just an architectural curiosity and became something closer to a guardian of an unspoken truth. Where archaeology faltered, local legend began to fill the silence with narratives far stranger than any masonry blueprint. One persistent whisper holds that the pillar is not a pillar at all, but a vimana, a segment of a celestial chariot stranded here during a war between gods. Others speak of sage Agastya himself blessing the rock to hover as a demonstration of the spiritual weightlessness attainable through pure meditation. A darker strand of lore suggests the pillar is an axis point, a pivot upon which the entire temple's cosmic alignment balances. Dislodge it, or force it fully to the ground, and you do not merely break a stone. You snap the energy grid that protects the land. These tales might sound like colorful superstition to a modern ear, but they encode a deeper acknowledgement of an unsolved physical problem. If we strip away the supernatural, we must face the brutal material reality. Granite of this density, weighing several tons, should crack under its own unsupported leverage. A standard engineering principle of cantilevered beams would demand a hidden anchor, a deep socket inside the roof slab that holds the weight invisibly. But exploratory drills and ground-penetrating radar have produced reports that remain inconclusive, muddied, or simply never released to the public. The pillar seems to guard its mechanism with the same sacred ferocity the temple guards its gods. The first theory, proposed by rationalists, is a seamless stone joint, a ball and socked mechanism carved so perfectly that friction alone locks the massive stone in place. Yet the surfaces visible through the gap show no circular wear, no polished ball visible from the floor, just a rough, untooled-looking dark space. A second theory proposes a metallic core, an iron rod running from the roof down into the pillar's heart that has rust-sealed itself over centuries. But the temple craftsmen did not build with iron. They relied on an interlocking stone technique that rarely left room for hidden metal skeletons. Another hypothesis suggests that seismic activity over the centuries jolted the pillar slightly askew, and it froze into a mechanically stable, albeit impossible-looking, position. The problem with that beautiful accident is the uniformity of the gap. The space around the base is remarkably even, not jagged or shattered. Could it be a deliberate optical illusion, a masterpiece of parallax and shadow designed to humble priests and pilgrims into a sense of wonder? If that is the case, the illusion is so perfect that it continues to fool high-resolution digital cameras and measurement lasers even now. You find yourself standing in the stone hall, the air thick with incense and the low murmur of prayers, realizing that every logical path leads back to a wall. The labyrinth of theories does not narrow toward a truth. It spirals outward until you are left holding only the raw fact of the mystery. Perhaps the most haunting clue lies not in the column itself, but in the ceiling it supports, a ceiling adorned with an enormous mural of the wedding of Shiva and Parvati. That painting, the largest single fresco in India, depicts a divine union where the laws of the earthly world are suspended by the presence of the infinite. Some art historians whisper that the entire hall is a coded diagram of cosmic balance, and the pillar is the needle upon a celestial scale. If you align your eye with the pillar's tilt and project its angle upward, it points directly toward the sanctum where the deity's gaze falls. Whether by design or coincidence, this alignment weaves the anomaly directly into the sacred geometry of the temple. The human obsession with this stone is not merely about answering a physics problem. It is about the dread of being fooled by the ancient world. We moderns carry a quiet arrogance, a belief that we are the first truly scientific civilization capable of deciphering nature's tricks. When confronted with a structure like the hanging pillar, that arrogance cracks a little, and we are forced to admit that the hands of 16th century artisans might have known secrets we have lost. Imagine the master builder standing in this exact spot, watching the final grain of sand fall away beneath the stone as the entire weight settled into the void. Did he smile at a clever joint he knew would outlast his own name? Or did he pray that the gods would forgive him for anchoring a slice of heaven to the earth? The psychological toll of such a legacy is immense. The families of local guides have passed down the story for generations, each retelling adding a layer of reverence and fear. They watch visitors slide cloth beneath the pillar, holding their breath, not because they fear it will fall, but because they fear it will one day slip back into the sky where it belongs. There is a distinct gravity in the silence of the hall, broken only by the soft padding of bare feet on cool granite and the distant ring of a temple bell. You might move from the hanging pillar to a corner where light filters through a carved stone window, and there, for a moment, you understand that you are inside a puzzle box. Every deity carved into the surface seems to lean inward, listening to the central emptiness beneath that floating column. Time itself behaves strangely here. The past does not feel finished, but rather suspended, held in a state of permanent, breathless tension. The Vijayanagara Empire is long gone, its palaces in ruins, its armies dust, but this single anomaly remains as defiant as on the day it was built. It serves as a stubborn reminder that a civilization capable of carving poetry into granite was not primitive in thought, merely alien in its tools of expression. The toll on the researcher who dives too deep into this riddle can be measured in sleepless nights and obsessive measuring. An engineer from a prestigious institute once spent 3 days here, sketching and calculating in a silent frenzy, only to leave his notebook behind, its final page blank. We do not know if he found nothing, or if he found something so contrary to his training that he chose to erase it, rather than face professional ridicule. The stone does not yield its secret to calipers or to faith. It remains an impartial witness to the frenzy of human curiosity. This is the quiet tragedy of such a shrine. It was built to inspire devotion, but it now draws a different kind of pilgrim, one hungry for the mechanics of miracles. Every high-definition photograph, every thermal scan, every amateur video posted to the world only deepens the collective fixation without providing a single definitive answer. We are a species that has split the atom and walked on another world, and yet a stone in a quiet Indian village holds the floor in a silent debate with our entire civilization. Part of the allure is the fear that the answer, if it ever comes, will be mundane, a geological fluke, a stuck wedge of gravel, a wet stone that dried and sealed a joint. And the deeper fear is the opposite, that the answer will be too profound, that the ancients possessed a seismic understanding of materials we have yet to rediscover. Either outcome forces a painful recalibration of how we rank our own era against the silent centuries that came before. Some geologists have hesitantly pointed out that such a surface could be created by an incredibly localized, intense heat, a property absent from all standard chiseling techniques. The mention of extreme heat inevitably drags the conversation back to myth, back to the cosmic fire that birthed Veerabhadra, the deity to whom the temple is dedicated. It is a dangerous loop for a scientific mind to fall into. The physical evidence begins to mirror the temple's own theological narrative. The abyss beneath the pillar becomes a portal not to a dark underworld, but to an older way of thinking where the physical and the metaphysical were never meant to be separated. We stand at the edge of this silence, and the silence grows too loud to bear, so we pack away our instruments and walk out into the sun. The white-hot light of the Deccan Plateau outside seems simpler, a world governed by the predictable laws of sweat and shade. But the image of that sliver of frozen darkness follows you home, a persistent splinter in the mind's eye. As dusk settles over the temple and the last tourist departs, the shadows reclaim their deep residence around the ancient stone. In the absolute quiet, with no one there to observe, does the stone rest fully on the ground, released from the burden of being a miracle? Or does it continue to hover in the darkness, a millimeter above the earth, keeping its silent, solitary vigil for a master who has been dead 5 centuries? The question lingers because it is a question about all lost knowledge, about every book burned in a library fire and every oral tradition that ended in a silent mouth. Human history is itself a hanging pillar, suspended over the void of forgotten memory, held aloft only by the stories we dare to tell about it. The sands of time erode empires, but occasionally they leave a grain of impossibility that refuses to dissolve into the expected past. We want to believe that time reveals all things, that gravity always wins, that the universe is consistent enough to be fully mapped. And then you look upon this quiet shrine, and you realize that the map still has enormous, dark, and beautifully carved margins. The floating temple teaches its visitors a humbling lesson without speaking a single word. Certainty is the luxury of those who have never truly looked. Beneath the frescoed wedding of gods, at the center of a geometry we cannot decode, the stone remains the central, enigmatic dancer. We leave it as we found it, hovering between the faith that built it and the science that cannot explain it, suspended in our collective wonder. And if you strain your ears in the stillness of the Lepakshi night, you might almost hear the faint, grinding hum of a miracle slowly turning on its axis, waiting for the world to catch up.